Inflation is going sky high. We were warned this would happen. President Biden ignored those warnings. But Biden isn't the only one to blame. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. I have good news and bad news. The good news is I got a new horse. With gas prices so high, I can't afford to drive around anymore. These people had the right idea. The bad news is inflation reached a new 40-year high in May with no sign of slowing down. With even food prices going up, not even switching to a horse is enough to avoid highway robbery.
Gas prices feel like highway robbery.
Too damn high. It's ridiculous.
On average, we're now paying more than $5 a gallon, a record, up 16 cents in 1 week and almost $2 more than a year ago. Gas prices help fuel inflation that's at a 40-year high. Take groceries. Milk up 20% in a year. Eggs up 75%. Or housing. The average rent costs 15% more. Want to get away this summer? Airfare is soaring, up almost 40% from a year ago.
Well, there go my summer plans. What were my summer plans? Not paying 75% more for an omelet. Man, I was looking forward to that. As of May, inflation has risen to 8.6%. That means prices are on average 8.6% higher than last May. It's even worse in certain places. The South has inflation as high as 9.2%. Turns out it's the prices in the South that will rise again. This inflation is largely driven by increases in the price of food, energy, and vehicles. And according to one analysis, it's costing Americans on average an extra $460 per month. This is especially hurting low-income families. You know, the ones Democrats promised to help. Not to victim blame, but trusting a promise made by politicians is like leaving your pet hamster in a tank of piranhas. I'm more surprised that you're surprised Mr. Nibbles got eaten. In response, the Federal Reserve announced a huge interest rate increase to try and slow inflation. The Fed had been trying to slowly raise interest rates, but it wasn't stopping inflation. The problem is, if they do too big of an increase, that could cause the economy to tumble into a recession. It's your classic lose-lose situation. The Biden administration did not see this coming. Just last year, President Biden was saying inflation was temporary.
The overwhelming consensus is it's going to pop up a little bit and then go back down. No one's talking about this great, We also know that as our economy has come roaring back, we've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation. But that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary.
Man, that all aged worse than guacamole, and almost as quickly, too. It's come to the point where Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen had to admit that she got her predictions wrong.
Was it a mistake, Madam Secretary, to downplay this inflation risk? Did that contribute to the problems we're all seeing right now?
Well, look, I think I was wrong then about the path that inflation would take.
The Washington Post praised Yellen for wisely admitting her error on inflation. Funny, in the past when I admitted to my massive mistakes on the job, I didn't get called wise, I got called unemployed. But Yellen didn't admit that Biden's policies had anything to do with accelerating inflation. Instead, she played dumb with a half-hearted apology. At least I hope she's just playing dumb. You know we're in trouble when that's the best-case scenario. So how much do Biden's policies have to do with inflation? I'll tell you after the break. Welcome back. Inflation is through the roof, and no one in the Biden administration wants to take the blame. Even after admitting she was wrong, Janet Yellen said inflation came as a surprise.
Well, when I said that inflation would be transitory, what I was not anticipating was a scenario in which we would end up contending with multiple variants of COVID that would be scrambling our economy and global supply chains, and I was not envisioning impacts on food and energy prices we've seen from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, as Chair Powell indicated himself, both of us probably could have used a better term than transitory.
Yeah, you think? Also, how are you still surprised by new COVID variants? We've named so many variants that we're more than halfway through the Greek alphabet at this point. Biden himself continues to pin blame on Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Today's inflation report confirmed what Americans already know. Putin's price hike is hitting America hard. I'm doing everything in my power to blunt Putin's price hike and bring down the cost of gas and food.
Everything in his power, except, admit he had anything to do with it. In an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal, Biden shifted blame to the Federal Reserve, saying that the Federal Reserve has a primary responsibility to control inflation. There is some truth to that, which I'll get into later, but Biden doesn't get away scot-free. At this point, I'm surprised he isn't also blaming the butterfly effect. You see, butterflies on the other side of the world caused the baby formula shortage when they drank it all while they were very hungry caterpillars. Not my fault. Under Biden and Trump, the federal government issued $5.9 trillion in pandemic relief funds. Naturally, they did the most responsible thing possible: borrow more money. But that money they borrow has to come from somewhere, so the Federal Reserve printed it. Okay, the Fed doesn't actually print money. It issues U.S. treasuries and then buys them through a complicated process that the government hopes most people don't understand. But it effectively creates more money. Trump's 2 COVID stimulus packages started that trend. But Biden only made the problem worse by ramping up that spending, overheating the economy as it was already starting to recover from COVID. It's like trying to get a fire going, and just as it's starting to burn really well, someone pours gasoline on it. Because despite what the government wants you to believe, printing more money does in fact increase inflation. Even liberal economists like former Obama advisor Larry Summers warned of the risks. And according to a professor of finance at New York University, the stimulus checks played a chief role in creating excessive demand, which in turn spurred inflation. Biden's response? He shrugged off those warnings. To be fair, Biden has helped boost one section of the economy, the "I did that" sticker industry. Business is booming for them. But it wasn't just the Biden administration saying this was a good idea. Way back in January 2021, one New York Times reporter said that Biden could learn one thing from Trump: the U.S. economy can surpass what technocrats once thought were its limits. Increase government budget deficits without setting off an inflationary spiral. Nice going, New York Times. The one thing you were willing to learn from Trump was the one thing that was completely and utterly wrong. The idea goes that there's a greater risk from going too small with government spending than from going too big. What? That sounds like something a kid would tell his parents when he's trying to convince them to raise his allowance. Come on, it's not the money you save, it's the money you spend on me. Even professional economists believed inflation would only be transitory. But that's because they used models similar to the ones used by the Biden administration. And yeah, most of the world is going through inflation right now, but ours is the highest. An analysis from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco found that U.S. inflation had outpaced inflation in other developed countries. That's thanks in large part to the pandemic relief funds. That's right, baby, America #1, USA! USA! An economist at the Hoover Institution calls this a clear demonstration of an immense fiscal helicopter drop. That's when money appears in people's bank accounts as if dropped from a helicopter. You know, like a stimulus check that just pops up in your bank account? Economic terms are fun. The point is, when you print money and send that money streaming into people's bank accounts, what you get is inflation. But maybe Trump and Biden aren't to blame for the current situation. Maybe we should thank the Federal Reserve for dropping the ball, or helicopter. I'll have more on that after the final commercial break. Welcome back. President Biden has almost certainly had a hand in causing inflation. Republicans are using this to jab at Biden and Democrats. But Republicans under President Donald Trump played a role in it as well. Looks like the "I did that" sticker industry is going to make even more money. If there's something both Republicans and Democrats can agree on, though, it's that the Federal Reserve shares part of the blame. After the 2020 pandemic crash, the Fed began printing money to prop up the stock market. This video is from March 2020.
Can you characterize everything that the Fed has done this past week as essentially flooding the system with money?
Yes, exactly.
And there's no end to your ability to do that?
There is no end to our ability to do that.
And it worked. Stock prices went back up. But it also created other problems. It gave a signal to the federal government that money printing is the solution. And so President Trump used deficit spending to pay for coronavirus relief. That was paid for fundamentally by the Fed printing money. And then President Biden also used deficit spending to pay for coronavirus relief, plus other stuff. This was also paid for at the core by the Fed printing money. So to prop up our economy, the Fed basically played Jenga with our money, and they did it on a vibrating massage chair in a Jeep while it was off-roading. Meanwhile, with all this easy money floating around after 2020, our economy was being propped up artificially. And because it was so easy to borrow money with low interest rates, investors started looking for new, high-risk, high-reward places to invest, like junk bonds, cryptocurrencies, even NFTs. But now, Wall Street is waking up and investors are scrambling to get out of risky investments as rates are raised and the market reacts. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen should have understood this. After all, she was the chair of the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018. In other words, Yellen is literally the most qualified person to understand the risks of printing too much money and how it contributes to inflation. And yet, she didn't see this coming? But it's not like she'll ever take responsibility. At most, she'll just wisely admit she may have been wrong. Just like how current Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell can get away with his mistakes by staying in office. And now, because of poor government decisions that caused inflation, our money is worth less. When will we ever see these people held accountable? And if it sounds like I'm up on a high horse about this, that's because I am, since thanks to them I can't afford to drive around anymore. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And we could not make this show without support from viewers like you. You can help us for as little as $1 per episode at patreon.com/AmericaUncovered, or our exclusive censorship-free social media platform, AmericaUncovered.locals.com. The links to both are in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.